that was a great panel, the last one was, and this one, it's interesting, the order of these panels, you could make a logic for any order, but the order here is one that we're going from, in a way, from the sort of the core action items to the more fundamental underpinnings of why we do and care about the environment and what we should do about it. Before I start, I do want to mention Mendel Rivers again, for those of you who weren't here, who aren't from South Carolina. The comment that Bobby Creed made about Mendel Rivers was great. When he was in Congress, he was responsible for getting all sorts of Army bases and Navy bases and the like located here. And at one point, it may have been Everett Dirksen, said, Congressman, if you put one more Army base on Charleston, it's going to sink. So, we had a very effective legislative delegation back then. The other thing I did want to mention, and I think just to, I guess the moderator's, preference, propriety, whatever, is that we have been working with a group, and Lynn Teague, too, especially League of Women Voters, called the South Carolina Policy Council, and they are a libertarian think tank, I guess, and we've worked with the Tea Party groups on ethics reform, and I think we've been very pleased to have their activism involved in this campaign. As Josh Silver noted, it is an issue that crosses boundaries, and everyone across the political spectrum is fed up with the situation. They are frustrated and they want to see things changed, and so we have been, again, pleased to be able to work across the spectrum to try to change that. And also thanks to the League of Women Voters for their leadership on it, because they've been fantastic. The next panel is, we'll talk about spirituality, ethics, and nature, and I'll start by just introducing our panel moderator, Kara Donnelly, and I'm going to do something that may not be, I don't know, the right thing to do, but I'll start out by telling you that Kara's father, Strawn, was a wonderful friend of ours, a great philosopher, and a very inspiring person for those of us working in the environmental movement in South Carolina and in Chicago and in New York. And he really helped us think fundamentally about why we were doing what we were doing. He helped us understand what the historical, literary, and philosophical basis for why we thought the way we did and why we think the way we do. And he was just a great guy. And I hesitate to introduce Kara by introducing her father, because I'm thinking that how much my daughter Nellie would not like that. But I don't mind being called the father of Nellie, or the husband of Virginia, or the father of Francis, so I guess you have to get used to it. Kara has done an extraordinary amount in her own right. She is young, but she is a graduate of Yale, summa cum laude. She graduated from Yale Law School, worked in New York with one of the big law firms, and has been on the board of and then vice chairman of the Center for Humans and Nature, which was an organization founded, you should go to their website. It has a wonderful array of material on it on all sorts of things, ranging from spirituality to how to make decisions about road building, and it's a great resource for people just to learn about some of the foundations of, again, the philosophical foundations of the conservation movement. Kara has moved here, fortunately, to Charleston, and she and her husband, Nate Berry, who is also in the conservation arena, and we feel very fortunate to have them. And thank you, Kara, for being the moderator today. We have a great panel.
Well, thanks, Dana, and I am not offended at all being introduced as Sharon Donnelly's daughter. I'm under no illusion that that is why I'm here, because it is because of him that I care about these issues and I care about this place. And I just want to say what an honor it is to be included, to be asked to participate in this conference. It has been an incredible 2 days, and even just to sit on stage here with these panelists who are brilliant and we'll hear such, I think, thought-provoking things from. And I think we also, Dana mentioned the order. I think it's our real good fortune to be the penultimate panel in this conference, because if you're like me, your head is just swimming right now, and in the best way. And I think I feel equal parts inspired and daunted by the last couple of days, inspired by so many innovative ideas. We heard about some this morning that are really, I think, kind of revolutionary and have the potential to make great change and the changes we need, and daunted because to implement those ideas and to really realize the change that we need to see in order to face these great challenges both here in the Lowcountry and nationally and internationally, we need action. And action is tricky. It's really tough to get people to act, to change their actions, or to act more. And one of the things that we believe at the Center for Humans and Nature, and that my father really believed, is that people act according to their values and to their beliefs. And sometimes people may not see the connection between what they really believe in a deep and sort of inexplicable way and the things that are going on around them. So we try to make those connections at the Center for Humans and Nature, and we also try to, if needed, change what people think and change their minds. And obviously, I think religion and organized religion and more personal, independent spirituality, and certainly ethics and a sense of moral obligation and intergenerational justice, those are the things that kind of undergird what we've been talking about in the last 2 days, and they're also what I think can make it all cohere, that make it a little bit less daunting, because if it's put in the right framework and people feel it, then they may be inclined to do something about it. So we have these wonderful panelists, and I'll introduce them briefly, although you have their full bios in the materials. And starting off with Mary Evelyn Tucker, who is right to my left, who is a co-founder and co-director of the Forum on Religion and Ecology at Yale, where she holds a joint appointment in the School of Forestry and Environmental Studies and the Divinity School. So what could be more perfect for today? The most recent of her many contributions to the fields of religious studies and ecology is The Journey of the Universe, which is a book, a PBS film, and a series of educational interviews that she and Brian Swimmey completed in 2011. And if you haven't had a chance to see that movie or see the book, I recommend it highly. It really changes the way you think about our world and ourselves within it. And you can read about the many, many other publications that Mary Evelyn has had a hand in, but suffice it to say, she is a major thought leader in the study of how religion and spirituality have and should play a leading role in redressing the damage that we humans have done, both wittingly and unwittingly, to the planet and its processes. And following Mary Evelyn is John Rashford, who many of you probably know. He is a professor here at the College of Charleston of anthropology, and his main research focuses on ethnobotany, which is the study of the relationship between people and plants. And John is especially expert in the history of the relationship between people and trees, and has spent considerable time studying the baobab tree, from its roots in Africa to its emergence in the Americas. And I had the good fortune of hearing a little bit of that research, just a couple of weeks ago, and it was very clear at that talk that the story of the baobab tree is as much a story about people and their spiritual beliefs as it is about a tree, a plant. And John is a native of Jamaica and received his PhD from the Graduate Center of the University of New York, but soon thereafter moved to the Lowcountry, where he settled on John's Island and still lives today. And last but not least is David Schei, who I'm sure, again, many of you know as the former president of Furman University. He was president from 1994 to 2010, and in that period, Furman became a national leader in promoting sustainability, and that was really all due to David. He was a charter signatory of the American College and University President's Climate Commitment in 2006, and he oversaw the construction of the first LEED certified building in South Carolina, and now there are 7 LEED buildings on Furman's campus. In 2010, Furman's board named its Center for Sustainability for David, solidifying his legacy on campus. And in addition to his visionary work as the president, as a leader, fostering this ethic of sustainability at Furman. David is a prolific writer and accomplished historian and has published a wide range of books and articles on topics such as the simple life and realism in American history, and as well as a best-selling series of textbooks on American history. And he has particular expertise in the intersection of our country's religious and environmental history, which is clearly quite relevant to today's discussion. So I will turn it over to Mary Evelyn to get us started.
Thank you. It's formidable, isn't it, to have politics and religion close by. You're not supposed to talk about them. But here they are, and what an amazing panel that was. Like so many, I want to join the chorus of deep thanks to Dana and to Catherine and to all the staff. Have just done a remarkable job. I've learned so much and enjoyed so many of these speakers, and it's great to see the next generation like Catherine working so hard on this. And John and I are also deeply grateful to Catherine's parents, Cameron and Gus, for bringing these crazy religion scholars to Yale, to the forestry school, and they're still trying to figure out why we're there, I think. But I'm grateful as well to have the partnership of Center for Humans and Nature, and Kara and her father, and George Robb, who's here, and John's on their board. So this is a very collective act that we're about. And lest I forget, I want to mention, since Had Talbot made sure I would put in the mix, Green Faith is a group that's working up in New Jersey on these kinds of issues and so on. So, but most especially, I want to thank Stephen Rockefeller for the inspiration for this work that we've been doing with him for almost 20 years, I would say. It's actually 20 years since he started a conference at Middlebury on spirit and nature. And he was ahead of me at Columbia, an inspiration there, and then our work together on the Earth Charter has been quite extraordinary. So we're building on the talk that he gave the other morning, along with what Gus was saying, and I think these challenges remain so central to who we are as humans. And even though this is a thorny topic, a complicated topic, and it sometimes seems an addendum, whether we say we're spiritual and not religious, we are somehow, at our core, meaning seekers. And as meaning seekers, that is something that needs to be put into this full spectrum of sustainability, especially for the flourishing of the planet. And that's what we're trying to do in this movement, I would say, it's both a field and a force. So it's a field within academia that I'll describe to you, but it's clearly a force within the larger society, and that is gaining huge traction. And I think that's the challenge here for your groups, how to link up with the force in society of religion. Now, we're also saying that cultural attitudes and behavior, they're formed, these worldviews and values, they're formed from world religions, but they're also formed from humanistic and secular ethics. They're formed from environmental ethics and biophilia, this general love of nature or affinity with the natural world, and aesthetics and the arts. We're saying this is also part of a growing movement in academia towards environmental humanities by saying that science and policy and even economics can't solve these problems alone, but we need history and literature, we need the arts, and we need religion. Now, how did I get interested in this topic? Very, very briefly. I went to Japan 40 years ago, actually just this month, and started teaching there. I left after Nixon was elected, and I had worked in his opposition campaign, and was reelected. I said, I'm not coming back until he's gone. And that actually did happen. But I was very inspired by the traditions of Asia. Shinto, Buddhism in particular, Zen Buddhism is still hugely important to me. And then I became very keenly interested in Confucianism, because Confucianism has a deep sense of politics, of education, of family, and it has probably influenced more people on the planet than any other tradition, if you take the whole of Chinese civilization. We can talk more about that. But Confucianism is a religion in a different sense, because it's trying to transform society. It's trying to cultivate people, but it says essentially we have a responsibility for our ancestors and for future generations. And that's what this type of conservation work is about. Now, when I first went to Japan, here was Mount Fuji 40 years ago. As you know, this is Mount Fuji now. When I went to China in the early 80s, here were these magnificent fields of rice, and this is true across all Asia. And here it is now. Here is southern China with Guilin in this very famous area. And as you know, thousands and thousands of fish were just found in the rivers coming into Shanghai. Here was China again, even 25 years ago. And as you know, you cannot breathe in these cities in China. And we are talking about cities, over 60 cities of 1 million people, many of them 10, 20, and 30 million people. We have a planetary emergency here, and Asia is going to reshape the face of the planet. It already is. And whether we're low country or high country, we have to pay attention to what's happening there. Now, my husband, John Grimm, is a specialist in indigenous traditions, and we've been adopted into the Crow tribe in Montana, and his work has been crucial to all of this, especially with the sun dance, one of the great rituals of the plains, and those people are still doing these rituals in the most incredible conditions of no jobs, health problems, alcoholism, etc. And they are doing those rituals for everyone on the North American continent, and they are so powerful, absolutely stirring. Of course, the tar sands and some of the issues across our North American continent are being fought by Native peoples. The pipeline that's trying to go through British Columbia is being fiercely fought by Native peoples. So who was our inspiration for some of this work? Thomas Berry's been mentioned by a number of people, including Gus and Stephen and David. Thomas Berry was one of the most extraordinary Southerners. He was from North Carolina, from Greensboro. But he had this sense very, very early on that the universe is the primary community. The universe itself is revelatory. It's not just scripture. We live in an extraordinary universe. And one of his most famous phrases was, "The universe is a communion of subjects, not a collection of objects." To Judy's point, how can we have CAFOs for animals if these animals are also living, breathing beings? This was Thomas Berry's view years and years ago. And he said, literally 35 years ago when I met him, he was saying no previous human community has faced such a comprehensive crisis that threatens ecosystems and species on a global scale. And he pointed out, we have ethics for homicide, suicide, and genocide, but not for biocide or geocide. And that is the scale of our problem, whether we're in South Carolina or North America or the globe. Because we are living with a yet invisible problem. We talk about climate change, but biodiversity loss is happening all around us. And it is one of the most arresting ethical issues yet to be addressed. Who is addressing them? Again, I said at the very beginning, we have science and policy who've been way out ahead on these issues, but they are realizing they can't solve these problems alone. And there have been terrific dialogue partners in this area, including Ed Wilson, our present dean, Peter Crane, James Lipchenko, Ursula Goodenough, Tom Lovejoy. These have been scientists who say we need the help of ethics, spirituality, and religion. And of course, in law and economics and in policy, we've had great dialogue partners, including Gus and Nick Robinson and Richard Norgard at UC Berkeley. Now, what is the common ground between science and religion and many of these efforts for our planet? I would say, and it comes back to ourselves as meaning-making creatures, that what drives us fundamentally, but it's not yet integrated fully into these discussions, is a profound sense of wonder, a profound sense of awe. The birds that live on these coastal areas that we stopped to see yesterday morning. Everyone is alive with wonder when we live in these beautiful places, right? But we need to bring that into the equation. From the cell to the formation of plants, to the magnificence of trees, and I'm going to look forward to John's comments in this regard, to the species that arose on a universe that's 14 billion years old, an Earth that is 4.6 billion years old, giving rise to this kind of complex life. What is the future of our relatives, largely in the southern hemisphere of Africa? 99% of the genes we share with them. What is the future of these species? They are deeply endangered, but so are we. Especially unless we recreate this iconic image of the late 60s. What does it mean to be on a living blue-green planet, probably the only life that we know within our known universe? How special is that? What is its future and its future for our grandchildren? This is why we made this film, The Journey of the Universe, to take a step back, to bring into the equation what science has been gifting us with over the last 100 and 150 years, that we live, as the Earth Charter says, in a vast and evolving universe, and that Earth itself is alive with a myriad community of life. That is what is in the statement of the Earth Charter. That's what Journey of the Universe is trying to do, light up that sensibility in all of us. So we have this film and book and educational series, as Kara kindly mentioned, and we have as deep partners with this large-scale story that Thomas Berry said in 1978, and you as Southerners know this so well, story drives everything. And the dream drives the action. And the Earth Charter that has this sense of this vast evolving universe and an ethics that encompasses ecology, justice, and peace is a partner for a global ethics to this large-scale story. Now, let's be realistic. We know that religions are moving into their ecological phase. And I'm going to speak about the problems and promise they face, but they are moving with, we'd say, top-down, bottom-up, in-between. Leaders are making statements, and you can see these on our website. Every major denomination around the world has made powerful statements on the sacredness of creation and the importance of human protection of this and the integration of people and planet. We have this grassroots movements of eco-justice. We have academics forging the ground. How is theology changing? How do we need to reinterpret the Bible? So on a international level, we even have this new pope. Who would have thought? Francis. He takes this name, and he has made already very powerful statements on creation. We know he's probably in another century on certain issues, but we hope he's in our century on the on environmental issues. The Dalai Lama. I'll speak later about this Greek Orthodox patriarch who's done remarkable work, and Rowan Williams, who is head of the Anglican Church in England, has made superb statements. We could go on with some of the Buddhist colleagues who we know in Asia, but here the head of the Episcopal Church, Catherine Sheffer-Shori, and I was just with her in Washington for a meeting with the Church of Sweden on climate change and doing lobbying there. She's a terrific spokesperson. And we have, as we know, partners in the evangelical community, Joel Hunter and others, who see God's creation as sacred. Now, at the heart of much of this is environmental justice, which has been mentioned earlier. And Wangari Maathai, who Gus brought to Yale many, many years ago, was a leader in this, saying women can plant trees. And she was an activist around the world in bringing together her African beliefs, her Christian beliefs, for the Green Belt movement. We've done a whole series of books on ecology and justice, which bring this together. Let me point now to what we all know, the many problems of religion. And those include intolerance, dogmatism, exclusive claims to truth, which I would like to point out as a student of Asian religions, The exclusive claims to truth are largely in the Western monotheistic traditions. There's lots of syncretism in Asia, and that includes in Japan. You can have a Shinto ceremony as a child. You can even have a Christian marriage, but you're always going to be buried as a Buddhist. Okay? So exclusive claims to truth are largely Western. But we do have otherworldly orientations. We have a personal salvation. We have nature being devalued, and we have, as Stephen and others identified, an anthropocentric focus in many of these traditions. But we have promise here. We have large numbers of people. There are 1 billion Muslims. There's 1 billion Hindus. There are 1 billion Confucians. There are 1 billion Catholics. If this Pope makes one encyclical letter to the Catholic communities, 1 billion people could be changed on the environment. That's what we're waiting for. We have power of text and tradition. We have educational and moral persuasion. We've got environmental ethics in action. That's the solar panels up at the Divinity School at Yale, and so on. So very briefly, what did we do? Against great odds, and especially because of our concern about what was happening around the planet. And we were saying environmental ethics are going to look different in India and China, or in indigenous communities, in African communities, and so on. So we started this effort at retrieval, reevaluation, and reconstruction of the traditions. And here's just one example. What does dominion mean? Are we supposed to be dominant over the earth and exploit it? Or can we reevaluate what this means for stewardship and care of creation? And those terms have been used here already. And so what does this reconstruction mean? What's the responsibility for a broadened ethics amongst humans and the more than human world? We had culminating conferences in New York, and Bill Moyers generously interviewed people from all the different world's religions at the United Nations and at the Natural History Museum. And then we formed this Forum on Religion and Ecology, which has a website, which has statements from all the world religions, bibliographies, a lot on climate change, resources for educators. So we recommend that to you for your work here. We did a series of books out of the conferences. We had done 10 conferences on the world religions, and there won't be a test on that tomorrow. But we have a smaller book coming out just trying to summarize some of this work on ecology and religion in the series that Gus edited at Yale. There's also a wonderful film, which I recommend to you, called Renewal, which is 8 grassroots religious environmental studies across the country. They're just about 10 minutes, but they give a feeling of what's happening. Interfaith Power and Light is in almost every state. I know it's here, and Sally Bingham's been one of the great leaders of this. And I'm kind of concluding with one of the headquarters of this in New York, as I did my graduate work at Columbia, was the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in New York. And Thomas Berry was a canon there and had a huge influence, but Dean Morton was a great inspiration. And they started 25 years ago this Earth Mass, where they bring the animals in for blessing. Paul Winter has magnificent music to celebrate the animals, the whale songs, and so on. There's other work that's been done on religion and water, and I just want to highlight one of the most remarkable projects, international project of its kind, and that is the Greek Orthodox Patriarch, over about 800 million Orthodox Christians, has led all of these conferences, largely around EU leaders, but UN leaders as well, spiritual leaders, scientists, and so on. And here's an example of the potential for reconciliation among traditions with great leadership. So here we were at this conference in the Amazon, highlighting all of those problems. And the Bartholomew had a ceremony with native peoples these are all on a boat, and there was a mutual forgiveness for the exploitation of native peoples in the Amazon. And it's that kind of appeal that we're saying the Jordan River in the Middle East has got to have all the traditions coming together, and there is a project of that type. The same in this country, ecumenical groups coming together, interreligious groups, that something transcends our differences, and that is the future of the planet. So to conclude, These are some of the main, we would say, virtues, sensibilities that are shared by all of the world's religions. And we begin with this sense of reverence for the earth community, a sense of respect for the myriad species of life, restraint in the use of natural resources, redistribution of technology and aid, reciprocity with all life, which I think is one of the most important, responsibility for the future of life, and restoration of ecosystems and the human spirit. And I'll leave on that note, as we are seeking, and as I mentioned the other day, as we are seeking around the planet sources of renewable energy, sources of solar, of wind, and so on, I would suggest the still untapped and yet renewable energy for this movement, for the flourishing of the planet, is a spiritual energy, an ethical energy, yet to be fully articulated, but integrated, as the religious traditions have been, with the seasonal cycles, with the miraculous quality of life, and with most fundamentally, that we can own and name that we live in a sacred universe. Thank you very much.